The bustling hum of the Gamma 9 spaceport was like a second home to Jack. The air was thick with the scent of ionized fuel and the symphony of countless dialects and languages melding into one another. As a freighter captain, he had visited countless ports, but Gamma 9 was by far the most chaotic and lively of them all. On this particular stop, Jack was on a mission to secure a lucrative cargo contract that would set him up for months. As he navigated through the throngs of travelers and traders, his communicator buzzed. It was Rick, his co-pilot and longtime friend, signaling him from their ship, the Star Wanderer. "Jack, you've got to see what I just found by the loading docks." Rick's voice crackled with a mix of amusement and disbelief. Jack adjusted his course, making his way toward the designated dock. "On my way," he replied, his curiosity piqued. When he arrived, Rick was crouched beside a small, crumpled figure. It was an animal, Jack realized, one he had never seen before. The creature was covered in patches of fur, its body a mishmash of odd proportions and features, giving it an almost comical appearance. "What in the stars is that?" Jack asked, squatting down to get a closer look. "I don't know, but it looks like it's been here for a while," Rick said, his tone softening. He offered the creature a piece of his ration bar, which it sniffed tentatively before devouring eagerly. "It's ugly as sin, but it seems friendly enough," Jack chuckled, scratching behind the creature's ears. Surprisingly, it responded with a low purr, leaning into his touch. "Looks like you made a new friend," Rick grinned. "What are you going to do with it?" Jack looked around. The busy spaceport was no place for an abandoned creature, whatever it was. "We can't just leave it here. It might not survive the night," he stated, his decision made more from impulse than logic. "So, we're now a rescue ship?" Rick raised an eyebrow, but his smile said he was on board. "Just this once," Jack insisted, lifting the creature with ease. It was lighter than it looked, and despite its initial hesitance, it curled up in his arms, trusting and calm. As they walked back to the Star Wanderer, the creature's eyes seemed to glow with a quiet intelligence. Jack wondered about its origins and how it came to be alone in such a bustling place. Back on the ship, they set up a makeshift bed for the creature in a quiet corner of the cargo hold. "We'll need to figure out what to feed it and, make sure it's not carrying any space diseases," Jack noted, still unsure if bringing it aboard was the wisest decision. Rick nodded, already pulling up data on his tablet. "I'll start by scanning for any known species that match its description. This could take a while, though. It's like nothing I've ever seen." As the creature settled into its new surroundings, Jack couldn't help but feel a sense of responsibility for it. "We'll find out where you belong," he promised, a statement directed more at himself than the creature. With a new cargo of sorts and a mystery on their hands, Jack and Rick prepared for the journey ahead. Little did they know, the ugly alien dog, as they had affectionately begun to call it, would soon prove to be far more than just an odd addition to their crew. The interior of the Star Wanderer hummed with the steady rhythm of a ship well-traveled. Jack had grown accustomed to the sounds. Each whir of the engine and hiss of the air recycling units felt like the comforting background noise of home. He watched the creature they'd taken aboard, now named Scruffs for its patchy fur, as it explored its new environment with cautious curiosity. "Hey Jack, check this out," Rick called from the control panel, his eyes fixed on the screen, displaying a list of possible species matches for Scruffs. Walking over, Jack leaned in to get a better look. "Anything promising?" he asked, glancing between Scruffs and the screen. Rick shrugged, scrolling through the data. "Nothing exact. It's like he's a mix of several low-gravity planet species, but not quite. I did flag a few xenobiologists who might help us identify him properly. Set up a comm with them, will you?" Jack suggested, turning his attention back to Scruffs. "We need to figure out what to feed him besides ration bars." Scruffs, seemingly sensing he was the topic of conversation, trotted over to Rick and Jack, his tail wagging in a slow, uneven rhythm. The little alien dog tilted its head, ears perked up as if trying to understand. He could just be a mutt. A space mutt," Rick chuckled, reaching down to pat Scruffs, who nuzzled his hand eagerly. "Yeah, a galactic mystery mutt," Jack agreed with a laugh. "All right, buddy, let's see if we can't get some expert advice on taking care of you." Later, Connected via a live feed, Dr. Helix, a noted xenobiologist, appeared on their screen. His interest was piqued immediately by Scruff's unique appearance. Fascinating. I've read about hybrid species, but I've never seen one in person. Can you bring him closer? Dr. Helix requested, his eyes gleaming with curiosity. Jack lifted Scruffs, positioning him in front of the camera. Scruffs, unbothered by the attention, looked curiously at his own image on the screen. Based on his features, I'd say he's part Caniflora from Vega 3 and maybe some Terran domestic dog. Quite the combination, Dr. Helix mused, jotting down notes. As for diet, try proteins common to both species, but keep it varied. And make sure he stays hydrated. Thank you, Dr. Helix. We'll start with that, Jack said, grateful for the advice. Once the call ended, Jack and Rick set about following the xenobiologist's recommendations. They prepared a small meal, mixing some of the protein packs they had on board with water. Here you go, Scruffs. Let's see if you like this any better than those dry ration bars, Jack said, setting the bowl down. Scruffs sniffed the food, then eagerly began to eat, his tail wagging more vigorously now. Jack and Rick watched, a sense of relief washing over them as they saw Scruffs happily munching away. Looks like we got a hit, Rick said with a smile. Jack nodded, watching Scruffs with a growing attachment. You know, I think he's good for the ship. Keeps things lively. Definitely more lively than cargo crates, Rick agreed, chuckling. As they watched Scruffs finish his meal, the bond between them solidified. The little alien dog had become more than just a curiosity. He was now a part of their crew, a new friend in the vastness of space. Jack and Rick spent the rest of the evening planning their next stops, with Scruffs snoozing contentedly at their feet, already an integral part of their spacefaring family. Jack piloted the Star Wanderer towards Azuron, a planet renowned for its advanced biological and environmental sciences. The anticipation in the air was palpable as they approached, both for the prospect of learning more about Scruffs and the chance to engage with some of the leading minds in xenobiology. Approaching Azuron docking bay, prepare for landing sequence, Jack announced over the ship's intercom as he expertly maneuvered the ship through the bustling space traffic surrounding the planet. Rick joined Jack in the cockpit, peering out at the sprawling research complexes that dotted the landscape below. Think they'll have the answers we need? Dr. Helix recommended this place. If anyone can tell us more about Scruffs, it's these folks, Jack replied, focusing on the controls. Once docked, they were greeted by Dr. Zane LaRue, a contact provided by Dr. Helix. Dr. LaRue was an elderly man with a keen, inquisitive gaze, and he was immediately taken by the sight of Scruffs. Ah, so this is the mysterious creature, Dr. LaRue said, crouching to meet Scruff's eyes. I've heard much from Helix, but he didn't do justice to how unique this fellow is. Scruffs sniffed Dr. LaRue's offered hand before giving a small, approving bark. We were hoping you could help us figure out exactly what he is, maybe help with his specific needs, Jack explained as they walked towards the main research facility. Of course. Follow me, gentlemen. We have some of the galaxy's best equipment for genetic analysis, Dr. LaRue responded, leading them through the pristine halls of the research center. In the lab, Rick and Jack watched intently as Dr. LaRue and his team conducted a series of scans and tests on Scruffs, who remained surprisingly calm throughout the process. His genetic makeup is fascinating, Dr. LaRue observed, examining the data on the holographic screens. There are markers here from species we thought were unrelated. It appears Scruffs is indeed a hybrid, but of a very rare kind. What does that mean for his care? Anything specific we should be doing? Rick asked, looking over the scientist's shoulder. It means his emotional and physical health are interconnected more intricately than most. His species likely thrives on companionship and emotional bonds, Dr. LaRue explained, turning to face them. It's vital he remains engaged and connected with you. Jack nodded, understanding the gravity of their responsibility. We become quite attached to him already. He won't be lacking in companionship. That's good to hear. Also, I would recommend regular checkups, considering we're in uncharted territory with the species. You're welcome back here anytime for follow-ups, Dr. LaRue offered. Thank you, Dr. LaRue. We appreciate all the help, Jack said as they prepared to leave the lab. On their way out, Rick looked at Scruffs, who trotted contently beside them. "You know, Jack, maybe this little mystery was exactly what we needed." Jack smiled, watching Scruffs interact with various researchers who stopped to admire him. "Yeah, he's definitely shaken things up for the better." As they returned to the Star Wanderer, Jack felt a renewed sense of purpose. Scruffs wasn't just a stray they'd picked up. He was a remarkable being who brought new insights and warmth into their lives. The trip to Acheron had opened a new chapter in their journey, one filled with potential for discovery and deepening relationships, both human and non-human. Back aboard the Star Wanderer, Jack found himself more attuned to Scruff's behaviors and needs, thanks to Dr. LaRue's insights. As the days passed, it became clear that their connection was deepening, and occasionally, it seemed as if Scruffs was trying to communicate more directly. "Rick, have you noticed Scruff staring at us when we're talking, like he understands?" Jack asked one evening as they reviewed their route in the cockpit. Rick glanced at Scruffs, who was lying comfortably at Jack's feet. "Yeah, I've seen that look. It's like he's processing every word. Maybe it's time we tried to test his understanding a bit more." With a nod, Jack turned to face Scruffs. "All right, buddy, show us what you've got." Over the next few hours, they engaged Scruffs with various commands and questions. To their astonishment, Scruffs responded correctly to complex prompts, fetching specific items and reacting to their conversations with appropriate actions. "This is incredible, Jack. It's like he's really understanding us," Rick exclaimed, excitement lacing his tone as Scruffs successfully differentiated between their tools on command. "Yeah, it's more than just training. There's an understanding here, a real connection," Jack said thoughtfully, scratching Scruffs behind his ears. The breakthrough came one quiet night as Jack sat watching the stars. Scruffs pawed at him gently, then stared into his eyes. The room was silent, yet Jack felt a surge of emotion and an inexplicable understanding of Scruff's feelings. Loneliness, contentment, curiosity, all mixed together. "Rick, come here," Jack called out, voice steady despite his racing thoughts. Rick appeared by his side, concern etched on his face. "What's up?" I think Scruffs just communicated with me, not with sounds, but almost telepathically. I felt what he's feeling," Jack confessed, unsure how it sounded. Rick's eyebrows shot up. "Telepathy? That's new. But with everything else we've seen, I'm not even surprised. What do we do about this? We need to explore this further. If Scruffs can share his feelings this way, there's a whole side to him we haven't even begun to understand," Jack proposed, more intrigued than ever. The following days were dedicated to nurturing this newfound method of communication. Jack and Rick took turns engaging with Scruffs, trying to sense his emotions and thoughts. Slowly, they began to receive clearer impressions, images and feelings Scruffs pushed their way. As their understanding improved, so did their bond. Scruffs started to project memories, simple at first. His time at the spaceport, the loneliness he felt, and the joy of being with Jack and Rick. Each memory was vivid, bringing a deeper sense of empathy and connection between them. "This is more than just having a pet or a crew member, Rick. He's part of us now," Jack stated one evening as they all sat in the lounge area, Scruffs comfortably nestled between them. Rick nodded, his gaze softening as he looked at Scruffs. "He's family, and it's clear he's got more to show us about his species. Maybe they're capable of more than anyone thought." "Exactly. We need to document everything. This could change how we interact with other species out here," Jack suggested, already thinking of the implications. With a new purpose, they set up recordings of their sessions with Scruffs, capturing the evolution of their communication. Each session was a revelation, showcasing the depth of Scruff's intelligence and emotional capacity. As they charted unknown territory together, Jack, Rick, and Scruffs grew into a unit, each learning from the other, expanding their understanding of life in the galaxy. The Star Wanderer had become more than just a ship. It was a home, a place of discovery, and a bridge between species brought together by the universe's strange machinations. As the Star Wanderer cruised through the less charted sectors of the nebulae expanse, Jack and Rick's understanding of Scruff's unique abilities continued to deepen. The bond they shared wasn't just beneficial for communication. It seemed to influence their navigation and decision-making processes as well, making their journey through the galaxy smoother and more intuitive. Seems like Scruffs here might be our lucky charm, Rick commented one afternoon as they plotted a course around a notoriously tricky asteroid field. The little alien dog sat perched next to the navigation console, eyes fixed on the screen as if he understood the stakes. More than luck, I think he's actually helping us. Notice how he perks up every time we come to a decision point? Jack replied, watching Scruffs react to the changing data on the display. Suddenly, the communication console beeped. An incoming message from a nearby planet, signaling a distress call. Jack glanced at Rick, then at Scruffs, whose ears had perked up noticeably. "Looks like we're needed," Jack said, decoding the message. "It's from Period 4. A settlement needs help with a medical emergency. They're short on supplies and expertise." Rick nodded, his expression turning serious. "Let's reroute." "Scruffs, buddy, think you can help guide us there quickly?" Scruffs barked softly, tail wagging as if in affirmation. As the Star Wanderer altered its course, the crew prepared for the humanitarian mission. Upon landing on Period 4, they were greeted by a small crowd of locals, led by a man named Torin, the settlement's de facto leader. "Thank you for coming," Torin said, shaking Jack and Rick's hands fervently. "We've got a breakout of Zolorian flu. It's not usually fatal, but without the right treatment, it can weaken a population considerably." Jack and Rick followed Torin to their makeshift clinic, where Scruffs immediately began interacting with the patients, eliciting smiles and gentle laughter with his odd appearance and gentle demeanor. "It's incredible," Torin observed, watching Scruffs. "It's like he knows how to make them feel better." "We found he's got a knack for lifting spirits," Rick explained. "He's more than just a pet." As they distributed the medical supplies and shared what knowledge they had, Jack felt a connection not only to the people of Period 4, but also to the broader responsibilities they held as spacefarers. They were here to explore and trade, yes, but also to assist and connect, to build relationships that could stand the tests of distance and time. Later that evening, as they shared a meal with Torin and his advisors, the conversation turned to Scruffs and his mysterious abilities. "You've got yourselves a remarkable companion. The way he's helped today, it goes beyond simple understanding. There's an empathy there," Torin remarked, passing a bowl of local stew to Jack. "We've started to think there's a lot more to his kind than anyone guessed. Maybe they're meant to be mediators of sorts, bridging gaps between species and cultures," Jack mused aloud. "It makes you wonder what other mysteries are out there, waiting in the unknown," Rick added, his gaze drifting to the stars visible through the window. The next morning, as they prepared to depart, Torin offered them supplies and maps of nearby sectors as a thank you. "You've done more for us than you know. This isn't just about curing a sickness. It's about showing there's still good out there, that the galaxy isn't as vast and cold as it seems." With new supplies and fresh perspectives, Jack, Rick, and Scruffs boarded the Star Wanderer, ready to continue their journey. The experience on Period 4 had reinforced their mission not just as traders or explorers, but as ambassadors of goodwill, carrying with them the spirit of connection that Scruffs embodied so perfectly. The Star Wanderer approached the orbital station of Lyther Prime, a hub of activity where emissaries from various civilizations gathered to negotiate trade, share knowledge, and occasionally settle disputes. Jack and Rick had no intention of becoming involved in galactic politics, but circumstances seemed to have other plans. As they docked, Scruffs pressed his nose to the viewport, watching the station's lights flicker against the darkness of space. Jack chuckled. "He's more curious about this place than we are." Rick strapped on his gear, preparing to disembark. "Well, let's hope his curiosity doesn't get us into trouble." They stepped into the station's bustling atrium, a kaleidoscope of alien species moving about with purpose. Rick nudged Jack, pointing to a towering figure with metallic scales and 6 arms. "See that guy? Don't spill your drink around him." "Noted." Jack replied with a smirk as they navigated toward the central hall, where an auction of rare artifacts was taking place. The cargo they had picked up on their last stop was in high demand, and they hoped to strike a deal that would fund their next few months of travel. While Jack handled negotiations, Rick stayed near Scruffs, who had become a magnet for attention. A group of spectators surrounded him, fascinated by his unique appearance. "This creature, what is it?" asked a 3-eyed alien in a flowing robe, tilting its head to examine Scruffs. "He's Scruffs," Rick said simply, trying not to laugh at the alien's expression. "A loyal companion and a bit of a mystery." The alien wasn't satisfied with such a brief answer. "I sense something unusual. He's not like other creatures. May I?" Rick hesitated but nodded, allowing the alien to approach. Scruffs, unbothered, sat still as the alien extended a hand, emitting a faint, pulsing light. Suddenly, Scruffs responded, not with sound, but with a ripple of energy that everyone in the vicinity seemed to feel. "What was that?" Rick asked, stepping closer. The alien stepped back, its 3 eyes widening. "This is no ordinary animal. He carries a presence, an energy unlike anything I have encountered." Meanwhile, Jack finished the negotiations and returned, catching the tail end of the conversation. "What's going on?" Rick quickly filled him in, and the 3-eyed alien added, "You must bring this being to the Galactic Council chambers. They must see this for themselves." Jack frowned, unsure of what they were being dragged into. "We're just traders. We're not here to make waves." "And yet, waves seem to follow you," the alien replied cryptically, gesturing for them to follow. Reluctantly, Jack and Rick accompanied the alien to the council chambers, with Scruffs trotting faithfully by their side. The chambers were grand and imposing, filled with representatives from dozens of species seated in a circular arrangement. As the trio entered, a hush fell over the room. Scruffs seemed to sense the gravity of the moment and stood tall, his odd features illuminated by the chamber's soft light. "This creature," the 3-eyed alien began, addressing the assembly, "has demonstrated an ability that transcends language and culture. It is a bridge, a connection between us all. I propose we study this phenomenon." Jack stepped forward, his protective instincts kicking in. "Hold on. Scruffs isn't some lab experiment. He's part of our crew, our family." The room erupted in murmurs. Some delegates seemed supportive, while others looked skeptical. A reptilian representative spoke next, its voice sharp and deliberate. "If what you say is true, then this creature may hold answers we have sought for centuries. It would be unwise to dismiss this opportunity." Rick leaned toward Jack, whispering, "This is getting out of hand." "I know," Jack muttered back. Then, raising his voice to address the council, he said, "Look, I get that you're curious, but Scruffs isn't a tool or a key to some cosmic puzzle. He's a sentient being, and he chooses who he connects with. If you want answers, you're going to have to earn his trust." To everyone's surprise, Scruffs stepped forward, his gaze sweeping across the room. A wave of calm seemed to radiate from him, silencing the assembly. For a moment, Jack and Rick could feel it too, a sense of unity, understanding, and a reminder of the shared existence among the galaxy's many species. The council members sat in stunned silence. Finally, an elder delegate spoke, their voice filled with awe. "Galactic aliens neglected their ugly alien dog, but what happened next would shock the galaxy." Jack smirked at the absurdity of the phrase, but said nothing, letting the moment speak for itself. As the meeting concluded, the council agreed to respect Scruff's autonomy and to recognize the potential for greater understanding he symbolized. Jack and Rick left the chambers with Scruffs at their side, feeling a mixture of relief and pride. "You realize we just made history, right?" Rick said as they headed back to the Star Wanderer. "Yeah, but let's not make a habit of it," Jack replied, laughing. "I'd rather stick to trading and exploring." As they boarded their ship, Scruff settled into his usual spot by the viewport. Jack and Rick exchanged a glance, both aware that their journey had taken a turn they never expected, guided by a creature who had proven to be far more than they'd ever imagined. Jack and Rick sat in the cockpit of the Star Wanderer, navigating through the asteroid fields near the outer rim. Scruffs was sprawled on the floor, his odd but endearing face pressed against the cool surface. After their encounter at the Galactic Council, the ship had been quieter, the weight of their newfound notoriety sinking in. Rick leaned back in his chair, tossing a ration wrapper into the trash. "So, what now, Jack? Are we just interstellar ambassadors for Scruffs?" Jack smirked, adjusting the controls. "Ambassadors? Hardly. But we might have to rethink how we move through the galaxy now. Seems like we're carrying more than just cargo these days." A soft bark interrupted them, and Scruffs padded over to Jack's chair, nudging his leg. Jack reached down to scratch behind the creature's ears. See? Even he knows we're in over our heads. Rick laughed. Yeah, but we've been in worse spots. Remember when that Atron customs officer tried to impound the ship over that mislabeled crate of durium? That was your fault, Jack shot back. You're the one who wrote snacks on a shipment of mining explosives. It worked, didn't it? They didn't bother inspecting it after that, Rick replied with a grin. Their banter was interrupted by an incoming transmission. Jack tapped a button, and the holographic image of a woman appeared. She was dressed in the formal attire of a galactic researcher, her face serious but curious. Captain Jack Tanner, co-pilot Rick Hayes, I'm Dr. Marinetten, she began. I represent a coalition of scientists who've heard about your unique companion. Rick groaned, muttering, Here we go again. Jack remained polite. What can we do for you, Dr. Eden? She smiled faintly. We're not here to impose or demand anything. We're intrigued by Scruffs and his abilities. My team specializes in studying interspecies empathy. We believe your bond with him could help us understand how such connections are formed across genetic divides. And what do you want from us? Jack asked, skeptical. Simply an opportunity to observe. Nothing invasive, I assure you. Your travels could be the key to uncovering how beings from entirely different origins can understand each other, Dr. Eden explained. Jack glanced at Rick, who shrugged. We'd have to talk about it. We're not keen on turning Scruffs into a science project. Of course, Dr. Eden said. I'll send the details. If you're interested, contact us. Either way, thank you for your time. The transmission ended, and Rick leaned back, folding his arms. What do you think? Jack sighed. I think we're stuck in this whether we like it or not. Scruffs isn't just some odd pet anymore. He's become a symbol for something bigger. Yeah, but symbols don't make us credits, Rick pointed out. How are we supposed to keep flying if all we do is play interstellar diplomats? Jack considered this, his hand absently stroking Scruff's head. We'll figure it out. Maybe we can strike a balance. Keep trading while letting people learn from him. Balance. That's a good one, Rick said, chuckling. You think Scruffs will agree to that? The little alien dog barked once, wagging his tail as if to say, I'm ready for anything. Jack grinned. Looks like he's in. And honestly, so am I. With their course set and their purpose evolving, Jack and Rick prepared for the next chapter of their journey. They weren't just traders anymore. They were explorers, caregivers, and perhaps unwittingly catalysts for change in a galaxy far larger than they had ever imagined. The Star Wanderer drifted quietly over the blue-green planet of Lycan, a world Jack and Rick had picked as their next stop after much deliberation. It was a place known for its vast, open spaces, friendly locals, and strong markets. A perfect combination for a crew looking to recharge and trade. Jack leaned back in his chair, studying the planet's surface on the navigation screen. Looks peaceful enough. Think we'll have a quiet landing for once? Rick snorted. Not a chance. You know something always happens when we touch down. Scruffs barked from his usual perch near the viewport, as if agreeing. Jack chuckled, reaching down to pat his head. Well, let's see how long we can keep it quiet this time. The landing was smooth, and the port authorities barely gave them a second glance. As they stepped off the ship, the crisp air and vibrant colors of Lycan's surface struck them immediately. All right, what's the plan? Rick asked, adjusting his jacket as they walked into the bustling market district. First, sell off the last of our cargo. Second, grab some supplies. Third, Jack glanced at Scruffs, who was sniffing the ground excitedly. Let this guy stretch his legs? Rick nodded. Sounds simple enough. I'll handle the supplies if you want to deal with the traders. Deal. Meet back at the ship in a couple of hours, Jack said, heading toward a row of brightly colored vendor stalls. The market was alive with chatter, smells of exotic spices, and the occasional outburst of laughter. Jack found a buyer quickly, a wiry man named Orin who drove a hard bargain but eventually offered a fair price for their goods. As Jack finished the deal, Scruffs caught the attention of a small group of children playing nearby. They approached cautiously, their wide eyes taking in his odd appearance. Is he friendly? One of the boys asked, looking up at Jack. The friendliest, Jack replied, gesturing for them to pet Scruffs. The little alien dog wagged his tail and leaned into their hands, eliciting giggles. "He's so strange but cute," one of the girls said, laughing. Jack smiled, watching the interaction. Scruffs had a way of breaking barriers effortlessly, a gift Jack was beginning to understand more deeply with each passing day. Rick returned just as the children reluctantly left. "Got everything we need," he said, hoisting a sack of supplies onto his shoulder. "Looks like Scruffs made some friends." "He has a knack for that," Jack said. "Everything goes smoothly?" "Surprisingly, yes," Rick replied. "So, what's next?" Jack glanced toward the horizon, where rolling hills stretched into the distance. "Let's take a little break. We've been running non-stop since Azuron." Rick grinned. "Now you're talking. Where to?" They followed a well-worn path out of the market, eventually finding a quiet spot under a massive tree overlooking a serene valley. Scruffs bounded ahead, chasing small creatures that darted through the grass. "This isn't bad," Rick said, sitting down and stretching out. "We could get used to this." Jack leaned back against the tree trunk, watching Scruffs explore. For all the craziness we've been through, I think this is what it's about. Finding places like this, meeting people, making connections." Rick nodded. "Yeah, and making a little money along the way doesn't hurt." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the sounds of the planet around them a soothing backdrop. Scruffs eventually returned, flopping down between them with a contented sigh. Jack scratched behind Scruff's ears, glancing over at Rick. "Whatever comes next, I think we'll be ready for it." Rick smirked. "As long as it doesn't involve another Galactic Council meeting, I'm in." Jack laughed. "Agreed. Let's keep things simple for a while." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the valley in a warm, golden glow, the crew of the Star Wanderer, Jack, Rick, and Scruffs, felt, for the first time in a long while, at peace. It was a new beginning, one full of potential, grounded not in grandiose plans but in the quiet moments that made life worth living.